Hello, Smite fans, and welcome back to another week of Smite esports action. Now that Smite Masters is done, we move ourselves into Phase 2 of not just the SPL, but also the SCC. That's going to be kicking off today. My name is J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me. As we start things up, it's going to be over in North America this time around with a bit of maybe a heated rivalry. The Eldritch Hounds and the Kaolin Wardens to be our first set of the day, starting up Phase 2 of the SCC.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I mean, we've got a pretty good idea of what these two teams are now capable of coming off the heels of Masters, and they're capable of a whole lot, it turns out. Very tenured teams, squads that have had head-to-head matchups throughout the entirety of this year, and I expect that to continue into Phase 2.
I mean, the Eldritch Hounds themselves proving that they're not just the top NA SCC team, but also the top SCC team in general from their run in Masters, making it all the way into the second week of play, even taking down one of the SPL teams at one point. Brief look at the schedule shows that we got the Wardens and the Hounds as our first match of the day. Then we'll have the Yomi Tanuki and the Shibalba Storm for our second and final set of the day. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter one here today because we do have patch notes that's going to be coming up after to talk about all the cool new things coming to Smite. But before we get to that, we still got to go through all the fun of the SCC.
Hey, man. It doesn't have to be quick. I don't know if you remember, but some of these SCC matchups have been a little bit long. Going back to Masters, I think some of the best of threes going over 3 hours each.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully those patch notes aren't set in stone as far as time is concerned, because we might be going a little bit over.
Yeah, for sure on that one. And a little bit of change-ups, too, as we're moving into the bonus patch for this one, the 9.5, some of the changes to crit, maybe seeing a little bit of differences over in the Hunter, maybe some change-ups to some of the warriors around the map as well with some of those changes. So let's see kind of what shakes up here. The SCC always keeps things interesting, though. They don't always follow the typical SPL standard style of meta, especially teams like the Kaolin Wardens.
Yeah, the Kaolin Wardens are a squad of eclectic players. Namely, Sino, I think, really does stand out as, hey, I'm just going to play whatever I want to play. If it's E-set in the jungle, it's going to be E-set in the jungle. If it's Scotty in the jungle, for some reason, it's going to be Scotty in the jungle. And then he's flanked by a team that is very willing to allow him to play those very strange picks. Mazwal, a very historied player. It seems like he can just plug and play with just about any sort of squadron, as well as Griff, Gino, and Relentless One, just being the talented three-man core that they are. I feel like the Kaolin Wardens are kind of a team built for Sino. Just do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, this is really just a team that loves to do whatever they kind of want to, and it's been working for them. They were the number 2 NA seed for a reason. They were able to go toe-to-toe with the Eldritch Hounds so many times for a reason, but that's also not to mention that the Eldritch Hounds were the number 1 seed in North America. They went undefeated throughout their reign in Phase number 1, made it, as I said earlier, into week number 2 of Masters, even taking down the SPL veterans of the Solar Scarabs, backed by a lot of it with Oath and Crimson, that 2v2 in the mid lane between those guys. They have been doing an immense amount of work for their team, but it's not just them. Even Quig, Dooman Bro, and Remakami all been stepping it up in Phase number 1. Let's jump into the picks and bans for game number 1 of our matchup between the Eldritch Hounds and the Kaolin Wardens. We jump right in. We get to maybe see potentially a new look, but probably a lot of similar things that we saw at Masters.
Yeah, I am curious to see how the Hounds are going to adjust their playstyle, specifically in Ps and Bs. Because the SPL squads that beat them kind of reveal weakness in that if Oath isn't taking his pick in the top 3, 5 dedicated bans to Oath, and I'm sure a weakness, 5 dedicated bans, does enough to limit him. We saw that Oath really fell down once he wasn't allowed to play those comfort picks. So maybe the SCC teams, maybe the Kaolin Wardens have taken notice of that and said, hey, we could just ban this guy out. Let's go ahead and try and limit one of their star players and see if maybe that's enough to edge him out.
Yeah, I mean, things like Bakasura, even Set notably was another one of those picks that really did not get to go over to Oath very many times. And at least for the Bakasura, that one will ring true. It, Kalina, and Baron Samedi have all been banned away by the Wardens. Hounds, they're going to take away Amaterasu, Nemesis, and Mercury. So still fighting a lot of these jungle bans out there. The Kalina's still eating a ban with how powerful she's been, and the Baron. No surprise if you watch Masters seeing these bans.
Yeah, I was curious on whether or not Jingwei would maintain a top pick considering 9-5 bonus balance. I like to coin it the anti-crit hunter patch.
Elegance
Spectral gets some buffs. A majority of physical defense items getting some buffs as well. And then all the crit eating as many nerfs as it did. You'd think Jingwei, who's very reliant on that crit style build, may have fallen at least a little bit in the priority pick order, but the Wardens say, hey, Jingwei's still very safe, still very survivable in lane. And if we are still going to build crit, she's still one of the best to do it, so we'll take it first overall for themselves, and I can't argue with it. I mean, as a jungler, it is just so annoying having to chase down a Jingwei.
And she really kind of feels like she's gone from this very passive, don't want to fight you ever kind of god to now being one of the most aggressive gods in the lane with how much pressure she's gotten. Speaking of pressure, Yamoja over there for the support role, going to be locked in for the Eldritch Hounds, alongside Chernobog, who's become kind of this #2 kind of go-to. Not just in the dual lane, though. We've seen a lot of Chernobog solo pop up as of recent.
It's just that global presence is so powerful. Not only is it the global presence, but also global vision around some of these team fights. We'll see Chernobog very often at the highest level play around Fire Giant dances or even Gold Fury dances. Just go up in the air and say, hey, that's where they are. Now we know they're not actually on the Giant itself. They're not actually on the objective. We can start to slow play it. Or, hey, this one guy's isolated. I'm going to jump to him as well. So the adaptability of Chernobog, as well as how well he utilizes some of the newer builds, has really led up to a meta where he has jumped, what, 3-4 tiers? Feels like back in Season 8, we weren't seeing this pick whatsoever. Now, Season 9, well, he's showing up, and he's showing up often.
One guy that's also showing up, maybe some of the help of the Glad Shield buff that came in. King Arthur going to make his way over towards the solo lane, followed by a Cabrakan, which we've been seeing a little bit less of as of recent. Still some jungle potential, a lot more support more than anything else. And the Hounds, maybe taking your advice there, Mifflin, grabbing a God for Oath very early on in the draft. Set going to be the #3 God picked up for the Hounds.
Yeah, set one that's going to be very good at getting aggressive once you're about 2 items deep. The first item on set, a little bit weaker. Curious to see whether or not he elects to go for Golden Blade to speed up some of that clear as well as that chase potential. But once you're 2-3 items into the build, set is similar to Kaolin in that he's online and he's only going to continue to get stronger as the game goes on. So expect Oath to get active probably around that 6 to 7 minute mark unless he sees just a wild opportunity arise a little bit earlier on. Speaking of this Hounds draft though, man, this is scary stuff. We've seen what Osiris is capable of. Now with some of these defense items getting a buff, Bumba's Hammer Osiris going to be very scary to deal with. You've got a phenomenal backline peeler with Yamoja. I feel like the Hounds have got a composition that is very well suited for the team fight, which might be a remnant of what they learned during the Masters event.
After that, Osiris is going to be Opwash and Eset locked in. Now, we've been seeing a lot more of the Eset support, but this is Sino on the side of the Kaolin Wardens, so my money is going to be going that this will probably be Eset jungle pair with Opwash, which actually just revealed recently on Twitter, I believe. Gorex put out that Moswell has the most competitive Opwash games by like double the next person. I think it's like Hurrywin or something at like 10. Moswell's in the 20s on this pick already.
Moswell's been playing this god for a very long time, and before it was even really good, once upon a time, Opwash would empty the crypts and immediately die, and the crypts would go with him. Well, they changed that because Moswell played it so much, and they realized maybe there's a change that needs to happen, so Opwash can essentially run into the middle of a team fight, drop his ultimate, and no longer have to worry about his own life because that damage is going to maintain. That slow is going to maintain on the field, so a pick that very much fits his style.
Game #1 between the Kaolin Wardens and the Eldritch Hounds starts up right now. That final pick, Olarun, making its way over to the Eldritch Hounds. Have been seeing a lot of priority over in that mid lane. Just in some of the recent change-ups, things with the Gilded Arrow have made him such a prominent pick over in that lane. It's just such an annoying god to deal with. The fact that not only did the Eldritch Hounds get the Yamoja to start this game, now you couple that with the Olarun. Not only are you slowed from one ultimate via Olarun, now you also can't run away with the ultimate from the Yamoja.
And Quig's got some great targets to lock down on the Kaolin Wardens. Relentless One, Sino, Moswell, and Gino all going to struggle mightily up against the River's Rebuke. And if your time's dilated in the middle of that, you're probably going to fall down pretty quickly. So taking a peek at the relics from the Wardens, an early shell pickup from Gino will likely transfer into a Phantom Shell, I'm assuming, before level 12, because the team fight is going to heavily favor the Hounds if that is the case. I think we're going to be looking at a slower pace, though, from the Eldritch Hounds, at least throughout the early. Olarun in mid is going to take a little bit of time to hit his stride. Very good at farming. Olarun, one of the best hyper farmers in lane. That second ability so good at clearing out these waves and immediately rotating towards these camps, but not exactly the greatest at team fighting, at least for the first 5 or 6 levels. So expect the Hounds to just be head down, nose to the grindstone, farming up. It's on the Kaolin Wardens to get aggressive if they want to fight early.
And that's one thing that the Hounds really kind of hammered home during the Masters Land was they would wait for that first 5 to 10 minutes, and once that 10-minute mark hit, it was all gas pedal for that team. And it's starting off already in the solo lane with Relentless One getting a ton of pressure up against Remakami, but that's just the nature of having a god with double the abilities of anybody else.
Yeah, Remakami has not gone for a great build for the trade either. No Death Toll, so no sustain available to him. He's just going to take a whole lot of poke, and he's only got the potions available to maintain some of his HP, and well, it's burning away quick.
And there goes the bees from Remakami. A nice little engage by Sino will take the safety away from that Osiris. Remakami going to have to sit a little bit further back under that tower line with fear that Sino could show up at any moment over there.
Yeah, fortunately for Remakami, Golden Blade is very cheap, so should be able to head back to base relatively shortly, and maybe even buy a couple more potions for his efforts. That said, losing on the beats that early on means Sino might just be rotating back around.
Crimson's going to fight back against Sino in the mid lane, get some poke onto the jungler, but Moswell going to put a lot of poke right back. Level 3 now on this Bosch, but Oath dives into the backline. Spirit Ball gets the beads from the jungler, but Oath is not stopped. He is still running down. Sino needs one more auto to find the kill, and he will. First blood goes to the Hounds.
Moswell not happy with how that one goes down. Wants to put a little bit more damage out, but will not connect. Great engage from the Eldritch Hounds. Oath realizing, hey, Sino's not only behind a full level, but also a little bit far up the lane, and well, Moswell's got nothing left in his tank. He can't peel out whatsoever, so easy pickup for the set, who closes gap onto this E set with just wild abandon.
Gino will trade out stun for stun against Quig, and those tremors really doing dirty in this lane early on. Dude Man Bro falls low, gets the shell out of Quig. Gino on this Cabrakan support. We're seeing exactly why these supports love this pick.
Just lock anybody down. The knock-up from Griff inside of the tremors will make sure they're sucked even further in. So difficult in the early portions of the game to deal with this Cabrakan's third ability. Once you start to look at like Heavenlies or maybe some bead picks-ups, then it gets a little bit easier, but as of now, Gino's CC might as well just be hard CC. Is Tremor considered hard CC? I don't think so. It doesn't burn Magi, so might as well be considered hard CC.
It really does just feel like, it almost feels like a cripple at some points, just for how early you're able to get stuck at, especially in the days, when we still had boots in the game. If you didn't have them, you were basically dead getting caught inside that ability.
Now it's all about whether or not the Kaolin Wardens can get their feet back under them. Again, it's the early aggression that you're looking at for the Kaolin Wardens. If you're one of their fans, you want them getting active on the map. Maybe looking towards this dual lane, which has been playing pretty far up the entire game, so it's going to be difficult for Sino to gank there. Could look over towards solo again, but Remakami is very rapidly approaching level 5, or could be looking at your own jungle because Oath's getting aggressive.
Doesn't have his beads, gets a lot of damage with the Skewer, a lot of damage right after. Oath finds another pick up onto Sino, and now in a 3v3 with Moswell rotating over, but Oath being level 5 is a bit of an advantage here for the Eldritch Hounds, and Moswell eating the brunt of that damage just from that Skewer.
Yeah, Dude Man Bro and Quig not quite in range to engage, but are in range to pull out this purple buff. And 0 defense from the Kaolin Wardens means the Eldritch Hounds, which I'd assumed would just be playing for the late game, have already established wild dominance in the first 4 minutes, first blood and second going their way, and a couple of invades to boot. All that said, experience and gold still largely equalized. It's not a massive gap just yet, 4 minutes in. Certainly significant, but from what we've seen during the Masters event and 9-5 in general, early game is not what wins you the match. It's what you're able to do between minutes like 8 to 15, how you're able to line yourself up for these first round of objectives. The Kaolin Wardens may be down, but they're not out.
You did call it right for the Hounds. Double Golden Blade, one by Remakami, one by Oath to speed up some of that jungle clear and to help Remakami up against this Bluestone King Arthur that he's got to deal with in lane. Pressure and duo still remains the Eldritch Hounds, level 5 for Quig and Dude Man Bro, but doesn't seem to want to at least get an engage going over in that lane. Meanwhile, Sino taking a little while before he gets his first full item online. It's going to be probably at least another minute before we see him really be able to get involved.
Yes, this is the double-edged sword of playing something like ESET. You just get locked down early, the early aggression into the jungle, and then all of a sudden you're not really allowed to play that wild pick.
Reverse Rebuke used, not going to catch anybody inside, and all of the Omi by Quig used to try and find some damage in CC up against Griff. Tremor comes through from Gino, not enough to lock down Dude Man Bro. And a good knockup by Griff will at least get a disengage out of the Hounds.
Yeah, not much chase potential there. I think maybe had Dude Man Bro elected to use his ultimate, could have chased out and likely finished off Gino, but they take over to 5.
Well, Oath does not care about anybody. He's just going to run under a tier 2 tower and pick up a kill on the Moswell. Beads out of Oath because of Sino's rotation in. Blink in. Spirit Ball is good. One more auto is not even necessary. He doesn't need the ultimate instead. And Sino will finally be able to put the Wardens on the board.
Yeah, I think that's a good decision from Sino to immediately go onto the circle protection. He sees Crimson out of the corner of his eye, and you don't want to let a kill slip away, especially on a massive bounty like Oath has got. That was probably 400 or 500 gold over to Sino immediately in response, and should do a good deal to catch this E-set back up, which is a major key for the Kaolin Wardens. Now there's level parity between these two junglers. Sino should be able to head back to base, finish up that item, and start getting active yet again. I know Oath's been on a tear, 3-1, but this set's not online yet. This E-set can be.
Ultimate out of Griff, forced by Dude Man Bro. That'll allow Griff to go back to base. And as Jingwei, very safe god, able to come back pretty quickly. But Dude Man Bro going for a purple buff invade. Gino finds the stun, drops the Tremors down, will be stunned out immediately from there. So no purple buff invade this time by the Wardens, or by the Hounds, I should say, thanks to the support of the Wardens.
Oath tries to take away back camps on the right side as well, but Sino's there too. The Eldritch Hounds keeping up pressure everywhere on the map, controlling the pathing of the Kaolin Wardens. You want to keep your eyes on Sino's cooldown. I think the Kaolin Wardens have got really good opportunity to look towards either neutral objective. We're a couple moments away from Pyromancer spawning up, and Gold Fury, as strong as it is in 9-5, might be difficult, but between Opwash with just setting up, what, 4 or 5 corpses as well as an ESET ultimate, I don't think there's anything the Eldritch Hounds could do to steal away an objective. So if the Kaolin Wardens can set up defensive position around one of these neutrals, it would be very, very difficult for the Eldritch Hounds to fight in. Not only is it just really good confirmation, but some of the pieces of this Hounds draft fall off when they need to be aggressing into a defensive position. Namely, Crimson on this Olorun is going to struggle to line up his ultimate. Sanctified Field, very good as a self-peel tool, or, hey, I'm going to stand right here, I'm going to fight. Very difficult to utilize as, hey, I need to get into somewhere.
I do see a 3-man group of the Wardens in mid, maybe trying to establish some pressure around that Fury, but the Oracle Harpies did go over to the Eldritch Hounds, meaning that if the Wardens try and go for a sneaky pick here, it will be spotted out. Sino's seen in the jungle, and Gino right behind him. So now we're seeing the Hounds start to group themselves up around. Quig will go in with the Riptide, finds the Rebuke.
Good blink.
And we'll get the blink out of Sino at least, but Gino's stuck inside. Will drop his own walls to try and block off the enemy team. He's falling a little bit low in the Sanctified Field. Will make an easy escape path out for the Hounds.
Gino's ultimate there is so perfect. If he doesn't spawn up those walls, he's just dead. He's sanctified completely. You've got 3 people staring you down, but he separates Crimson and removes a lot of that DPS, and eventually he's able to just walk himself out of there. The Kaolin Wardens playing very well on the defensive, and now the Eldritch Hounds have lost out on 3 major team fight abilities. Dude Man Bro, Quig, and Erupt Crimson dedicate their ultimates to that fight. With that said, the Kaolin Wardens answer in kind. 3 ultimates lost, but maybe less value.
Oath gonna continue just walking at it. Doesn't care about the damage that was just dealt right back towards him. He will chase down Sino, but he's falling low, and he's gonna have to think twice about his actions. Instead, he'll throw out as much damage as he can before going down. Sino picks up the 2nd kill for his team and for himself.
Griff on the deep rotation might be surrounded here. Has 2 people staring him down, but that's a Jingwei who's got ultimate available, as well as his bead, so not a whole lot of risk there. Oath just getting a little bit over-aggressive in the early game, I think. Just pretty happy with the pacing, I suppose. Has gotten very active on the map, but needs to realize he could just play for the late.
Crimson gonna eat a lot of damage and get another ultimate out of Moswell. Thought he just used that one, but then I looked down. He's got 30% CDR in the build, plus the pass of that Chronos Penance, so that thing coming up very often for these team fights.
Yeah, Moswell is one to get active, so this is a build that you can expect to see from him very often as well. Considering Sino might be a little bit more so leaning towards that ultimate for objectives, especially in about 30 seconds when the Pyromancer spawns up, it really is on Moswell to be that core of damage for his team, and looking at the damage charts, he's done a very good job of it so far, topping it for his own squad, even beating out the Soul Laner, which is a King Arthur, by the way. That's no small task.
No, definitely not, but we have seen that Rimikami has been more often just waiting for those waves to kind of hit that tower line, or even waiting to kind of just allow Relentless One to clear out those waves before trying to go toe-to-toe with the King Arthur, especially one that's got Sovereignty Glad Shield online. A lot of physical defense, but also just a lot of poke damage coming from the god, especially with the buffs that came to Glad Shield.
Yeah, Remikami's build, very good at clearing waves, very good at clearing camps, but not very good at lining up against Relentless One. Once it gets a couple more points into Tether, the survivability will be there. We're going to get close to looking towards some starter items pretty soon. Maybe a Bumba's Hammer pickup just for some sustain in the jungle. Might open the door for Remikami to get involved, but if Masters has taught me anything about Soul Laners, it's that they're just going to sit in their lane and farm until level 20 and then rotate out. So I wouldn't be too surprised if that's the case here for these 2 players, unless an objective gets pulled.
Big damage onto Crimson, gets the ultimate out of him. He will try and find his way out, eats the stun from Moswell's 3rd ability, but will find his way under the tier 1 tower. No relic available to him, at least for another 70 seconds. And losing that Sanctified Field, a big downside for the Hounds.
Yeah, no beads for Oath either. Fortifying Shell is up for Quig. but you gotta think this might be an opportunity for the Wardens to look towards some of these objectives. Gold Fury, probably not so, as you've already used both of your mage's ultimates, but Pyro, especially if Relentless One needs some help.
Relentless One does juke out the ult from Remakami, but it's still a 2v1. Beads out of the solo laner and a chase down through. Relentless One still sitting low, but Remakami even lower. He should not make it out of here, but the shell and the healing goes through the wall, not going to hold him in. Instead, now it's Dude-Man Bro rejoining the fight. Sino doesn't have a way out, and he will go down quick. Credit to the kill.
Yeah, Gino forgets that Osiris is just immune to walls as Moswall takes the 1v1 in mid up against Erupt Crimson, and now Dude-Man Bro might be left isolated.
Dashes his way out, but Griff dashes right back in. A Riptide will separate that fight, but now Quig is surrounded by 4. He can't find his way to the Riptide, and Moswall drops the Crypts one more time. Quig is slowly finding his way out. Will manage to get one last Riptide to find a path on out, and Oath able to squeak himself out too.
But can the Kaolin Wardens do anything with this aggressive posturing? You've already got the rotation from Griff. Pyromancer could be the answer here, but Remakami's already made the rotation back, and Moswall is not healthy enough, so it will be a reset for the Kaolin Wardens. Again, that fight, maybe not the cleanest from either of these teams, but at the end of the day, has done a good job of closing up a bit of that gap. Seems like the Kaolin Wardens keeping the gold closer than it ever has been, as well as the experience starting to close up as well. Even level leads for individual members of the Wardens. Sino now 1 on Oath. You've got 1 or about half a level for Moswall in mid. So the Wardens have done a great job of slowing down the pace of the game and then finding their spots. The Eldritch Hounds, though, will not let an opportunity slide by. Gold Fury pulled out and dropped with 0 opposition. And that gold lead is back to where it was.
Just no ward coverage on that side of the map to even spot that it would have happened. It's just going to be the sound notification, at least for the Wardens knowing. Remakami stunned out, eats the ult, does have an ult to get out, but Sino's got the distance with the Wing Gust to take him down.
Yeah, Remakami was not allowed to play in that engagement. The CC lockdown was just too much. Stun from King Arthur, into silence from Sino, into stun from Sino, into knock up from King Arthur. There's just nothing that this Osiris could have done, except for ult out, which he did, and then died.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too late, but again, that's maybe the earliest that he was even able to find that form of disengage. The Trebuchet was dropped in mid earlier on, so not much value gained from there. And another purple buff invade attempt, at least there, by the Hounds, but not going to go much further than there. The red buff was stolen away, at the very least, by the Hounds, so that's going to put Moswall behind just a little bit on damage. Dude-Man Bro ulting all the way to the right side of the map, maybe thinking he could catch Relentless One out.
No, Relentless One's not there. Crimson is, though. Sanctified Fields dropped, and that should be the disengage. Trade for Gino's ultimate. A trade I think the Kaolin Wardens are happy to take.
But Oath is going to keep going right back in. Ultimate from Moswall will drop through, and that'll force Oath out of the team fight. But now it's Quig going right back in. River's Rebuke does find 3, but only traps 1 inside of them. Moswall finds his way out. Quig down to half HP, but so is Gino. He's falling low. Don't want to stand there too much longer because Erupt Crimson's got the damage to take him down.
Relentless One with a 3-man stun and a circle protection, but no connection. Only a heal for the Kaolin Wardens. The Eldritch Hounds are still 5-stack, have the numbers advantage, but maybe not anymore. Crimson is no longer in this fight.
Crimson down to 10% HP in the backline, will heal up a little bit thanks to the help of Quig and his own healing. 4-man grouping of the Kaolin Wardens towards this mid-tier 1, but I don't think they've got the damage and probably not too many of the cooldowns to stick around here, especially with Oath rotating himself back towards the fight.
If Remakami can engage with ultimate, that could be good, but it looks like it might be a disengage. Quig gonna give him the Riptide, and Oath, realizing that Remakami can't stand against the 4 members of the Kaolin Wardens, won't try and do it himself, and instead it's all about defending this tier 1 tower, and it's not going so well for the Hounds.
The Hounds aren't going to be able to stop that one. Sino does eat a stun, but he will be just fine as the Kaolin Wardens drop the mid-tier 1 tower just shy of 15 minutes, and that will even up the golden XP. What small lead that the Eldritch Hounds did have has been mitigated by the Wardens. Dude-Man Bro will try and answer back with a tower of his own, but spotting that there may have been a rotation coming through, he will find his way out before the tier 1 goes down.
And take a peek at these builds from these ADCs. Maybe no time for it as Quig has been caught out in mid. Not a whole lot of damage going his way as Moswall has been zoned. Oath now the target.
Oath will find a way out. Dude-Man Bro now caught out in the midst of the fight. Will walk through the walls that Gino had left there earlier on. Eats the stun, gets the beads taken away from him, and has now separated himself in the fight because now Remakami in the backline does find 2 with the ultimate. So no healing coming from Sino. Crimson takes down Gino. Sino goes down to Remakami, and it's now a 5v3.
2-for-0 trade favoring the Hounds. 15 minutes in. Not much to do on the map. Pyromancer probably the only real target of aggression. Fire Giant a little bit too strong at this portion of the game, but the Hounds will not let the lead slip too much, and again have reestablished about 1,000 for themselves. And it's a phenomenal, just split team fight. Remakami lines up against Sino and says, hey, I know you'd probably love to get involved in the actual engagement towards my own tier 1 tower, but shame on you, I won't let it happen. And then to double Lord of the Afterlife immediately, making sure that none of the healing comes through from Circle Protection. Just great play from Remakami, who has been mitigated for the majority of this match. Relentless One has been getting the better end of that 1v1 and getting the better end of these rotations for the last 16 minutes. Finally, this Osiris allowed to do something, and he comes up massive for his team.
And Oath, who was kind of down and behind going into that original Tier 1 defense, I mean, he was coming down about a level and a half to Sino, has been able to completely swap that one around. Now Oath is the one who has a bit of an XP lead. Still only holding on to the 3 kills he got at the start of the game, but the damage that he's been able to output, just casually poking the support, casually poking out the mid laner in these fights, Oath has been able to keep his team in there.
But the difference is, when you're playing set, you don't want to be the poke guy. You don't want to be throwing skewers out from max range. You want to be playing how Oath was playing for the first 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game. Fully engaging, going into Kingslayer, sticking into these team fights. But the damage output and CC lockdown of the Kaolin Wardens has put fear into Oath. When's the last time we saw him actually engage in a team fight? I think it might have been about 8 minutes ago, and he died. And he has not tried since then. Ever since, it's just been, all right, I'm going to sit towards the edge. I'm going to throw my skewer out. Hopefully I find some poke. But poke is not sticking to the Kaolin Wardens. In the majority of team fights where Remakami isn't finding 2 or 3 man ultimates, it's all been resustained by either Sino using Circle Protection or Maswal doing this, just eating corpses.
Yeah, Maswal's been able to get a lot of value from these corpses, even going to a Warlock Staff second item. Still working on stacking that one up. He's about 20 stacks from getting that one maxed out, but once he does, he's going to get an immense amount of value. Not only did the buffs from 9.5, just give everybody more HP, he just gave a little small natural buff to the Opwash there. So maybe that's part of also why we've been seeing it so much more out of Maswal. Relentless One gets caught out by a Riptide from Quig. Gino finds
Good
a wall
wall.
in the back line. Dolled out a couple. Ultimate is available by Maswal, but not going to be thrown out just yet. Instead, it's Sanctified
Yikes.
Field and the River's Rebuke. Circle of Protection drops down as well, but Remakami in the back line finds a couple and is still chasing down, but good zoning and good defense by Relentless keeps the Hounds back.
Oath still has ultimate, as does Dude Man, bro. Relentless One and Griff, the only ones on the Kaolin Wardens with their 4-key available, but a good stun from Sino may have stopped the fight.
Sino got a lot from that silence as well. Remakami going to walk back in alongside his jungler. Oath is getting a lot of damage on Gino, but will now use his own defense to get himself back out. Sino finds another Spirit Ball onto Quig, another big silence out of Sino, throwing out a lot of damage, but not going to find any kills just yet. Maswal putting out some good poke, but everybody on the Wardens are starting to fall low, and Oath has re-engaged, gets stunned out as soon as he gets in, but now it's Dude Man right into the backline again, but somehow, someway, nobody has died in this engagement.
Both of these teams would get knocked over by a stiff breeze, but it's been phenomenal frontline play from both squads that keep their team alive. Relentless One engaging at the perfect times to peel out for Maswal to make sure Gino survives these engagements. Remakami with a 4-man tether forcing a disengage as the Eldritch Hounds, at the end of the day, with all the sustain in their draft, that are allowed to stick around and take the actual objective for themselves. A very long team fight, a very long dance around the Gold Fury. May not have drawn any blood, but it was a fight over the objective, and it does go to the Eldritch Hounds, pushing their lead even further. That said, the Kaolin Wardens have got a heavy grouping on the right side, have got Circle Protection. It might be a Fire Giant pull.
Nearly everybody got to go back to base to heal themselves back up. Fire Giant pulled. Oath is here as well as Remakami. Fire Giant down about a third of its HP. The Kaolin Warden's not willing to commit. Instead, they're going to have to go for a team fight if they want to try and go for the objective. Gino in the backline finds some damage up against Dude Man Bro, but not going to be enough to deter the Hounds. Maybe if they can get some more damage up over against Remakami, the Wardens would be more comfortable with a fire.
Remakami dropped to about 60%. Will have to resustain somewhere on the map, and the only sustain available to him is from that Bumba's Dagger. So, with no buffs up, he's just going to be waiting on his HP 5. The Kaolin Wardens, though, are not in a position to force a Fire Giant, even if they had TKO'd Remakami, as they are significantly behind in gold and a bit behind in experience as well. Despite having phenomenal confirmation, I don't think that's a coin toss they're willing to take. It's not a coin toss. They would get the Fire Giant, but they would immediately die afterwards, so why do it? And the Kaolin Wardens seem to agree as they reset back to neutral and continue farming up. The Eldritch Hounds, on the other hand, have got an opportunity, if they so choose, to force the Kaolin Wardens to make a decision. That's all Smite is at the highest level, is forcing your opposition to make decisions, and whether or not they answer correctly is whether or not they can extend the match or even potentially win it. And the question I think the Eldritch Hounds should be posing is, are you willing to defend Fire Giant? Massive gold lead, phenomenal space control between Quig and Erupt Crimson, great DPS. You essentially have got a triple auto attacker composition with Oath in the jungle, Olarun, and Chernobog. I think the Hounds could make short work of some of these objectives, especially with the continued presence of the Kaolin Wardens on the left side of the map.
With 3 of the Wardens on that side, 4 of the Hounds in mid lane. Maybe they could get aggressive up onto Relentless One, and they'll recognize that they have an opportunity to do so, but Remikami misses his ultimate, misses the slow right after. Riptide will zone Remikami, or at least Relentless One, away, force out the ultimate, but Relentless One will be fine. He'll walk away from the onslaught. The Ruthless Rebuke will lock him down for a little while longer, but he's doing just fine.
Yeah, you can either commit onto Relentless One and hopefully kill him, and that is a hopeful thought as it's a Beads King Arthur with full defense, or you could have walked to fire. Instead, they chase out the Relentless One, and, well, they don't get much for it, and now it's the Eldritch Hounds on the retreat. Gino's got to realize that you can't wall a ghost, man. This guy's going full Danny Phantom, man. Stop doing it.
Look, I commend him for the efforts, but I don't think Look, maybe he thought that he was able to catch somebody else along with that Riptide, but...
hold on, is that left arm? Is that in ghost form? I'm not... Let's try.
Is his left thigh there yet? I'm not quite sure. Pyromancer started up at least by the Wardens, but once again stopped by the Eldritch Hounds. They'll instead pick up the objective and then drop it right after. Maybe Quick still holding on. Sino will eat a little bit of damage from Crim, but that's Sino to give him a decent shield to hold his health bar out, but Remikami already swinging on this Osiris.
Pyromancer burning slowly down to about 20%. The Kaolin Warden's not going to step up, and Remikami allowed to throw out some free poke and actually get some pretty good knowledge from that. He realizes now, hey, if I ever connect my damage onto Sino's just going to die. That is a massive output, and, well, he's pretty tanky, Remikami that is, so he's allowed to go for these deep dive plays. Taking a peek at Sino's build, this is curious. I saw the book and I was like, okay, maybe it's like Book of the Dead, maybe he's going Polynomicon for like burst. It's Book of Thoth coming very late in the game. 21 stacks as of now. It's going to be a while till he's getting the full value of this item. That said, I mean, decent mana infusion off the rip, 80 some odd power just on the initial buy as well, so that's not awful. But it is surprising how much this is going to slow down his build. Can't go towards a dedicated penetration item, can't go towards potentially like a dedicated CDR item or even some defense. Instead, it's all about that mana and power infusion, and the power is going to be backloaded.
And it's going to be not just 1 shell, but 3 shells picked up by the Kaolin Wardens themselves. The Phantom Shell coming from Gino, so you can try and get themselves out of that Ruthless Rebuke. And then 2 more shells picked up by each of the carries on the Kaolin Wardens. Give themselves some extra shields to themselves, but also maybe potential for more Phantom Shells if one of them is already down.
Yeah, I think at least one of them should upgrade into Phantom Shell. Whether or not the second one needs to be, or third rather, should be fortifying up to the decision-making of the Kaolin Wardens. But keeping 2 on deck is very important, especially considering Quig's build. Now looking at a little bit of CDR, could go towards a little bit more as well. This Yemoja hasn't had the best ultimate so far, which is why I think we haven't seen the Kaolin Wardens dedicate the gold to fully upgrading already. But we're getting to the portion of the game where you're probably going to want to make that, because the second one good ultimate happens from Quig that's followed up by an ultimate from Crimson, could just win you a team fight, and 25 some odd minutes in the game could just win you the game.
Oath spotted out, will teleport himself on out before anything starts up. We did see a small group up of the Wardens over by the Gold Fury just to see if maybe the Hounds would try and pull it, but because of that vision from the Oracle Harpies, they did not elect to go that way, that being the Hounds at the very least. So now we're sitting about 25 minutes into the game. This is where we're starting to hit that late game stride for these teams. And so far, the Eldritch Hounds are the ones with a small lead, about 5,500 gold to their name. And the experience still very relevant at this point, as not many players have been able to hit that level 20 mark just yet.
But the later the game goes, experience starts to mean less and less. You only hit level 21, so how much of that experience lead is held by Remikami? How much of that experience lead is held by Oath? Because it's only a 1 level deficit in mid. You've got about 1 level in ADC, so deceptive, I think, is what the experience charts are as of right now. The Kaolin Wardens, not so far removed. It's just the gold separating these two teams. But massive power spikes have finally been hit by the Eldritch Hounds, and specifically Remikami, who has been at times dominating these team fights, at times the difference maker for the Eldritch Hounds, and at others largely just mitigated. I mean, he hasn't had the 100% efficacy rate, but now with Bumba's Hammer finished for this Osiris, even if he isn't getting the best engages, even if he isn't able to make that initial fight work for him, he's got a path to resustain. Bumba's Hammer goes a long way, especially considering how low the cooldowns already are on Osiris.
Well, you were thinking maybe Book of the Dead out of Sino earlier on with that first book. Well, now he will pick up Book of the Dead as the second one. So once that Book of Thoth is stacked up, going to get a lot of value from that with the Book of the Dead, give himself a pretty massive shield. The Eldritch Hounds have started up the Fire Giant, seeing maybe if anybody on the Wardens will step up.
50%.
There are 3 players here. Fire Giant low. Fire Giant still started up. Quick will get spotted by the wall from Gino. Quick eating a lot of damage, but the Sanctified Field will drop to the backline. Relentless One does find one, and Quick does go down, the first casualty of the fight.
Lord.
But Moswell gets erased by Remikami in the backline. Oath running through, but he gets CC'd out. Relentless One low, and Doomman Pro will find Sino. The chase is still on for the Wardens as Doomman Pro dives under the tower, but doesn't find the damage up against Relentless One. Instead, finds the crits up against Grip and Gino to slowly start punching down the ADC as Remikami and Doomman Pro find 2 more.
Remikami making great use of the sustain from Bumba's Hammer to do everything for his team. It was a great engage by the Kaolin Wardens. Gino locks down Quig. Quig gets owned by the Fire Giant, caught in the tremors and the walls, gets knocked up twice, and eventually will fall. But the entire time, Remikami on a tear in the backline, creating space for his team and making sure, even though Quig will fall, it will take a little bit of time. Even in taking an entire team fight, spearheading the engagement, tanking up the tier 2 tower, and now tanking the Fire Giant as well, still around half HP. That's the power of Osiris in the late game with this Bumba's Hammers build. He could do no wrong. It is going to take a very large, concentrated effort to shut down this Osiris, and the Kaolin Wardens have not got the greatest composition for it. We even got to look at what a 1v1 would look like between Griff and Remikami, and, well, Remikami won.
I'm pretty sure Remikami got more health back starting up the Fire Giant than what he had
for
there.
sure.
I mean, Bumba's Hammer, like you're highlighting, just such a potent item for this Osiris with his lower cooldown. So Remikami really starting to make his stride here in the late game. 3-1-3 on the Osiris, and most of that coming from just the last 5 to 10 minutes of play. Now the Kaolin Wardens had to fight against a full Fire Giant squad, and most of that's probably going to have to come on their Phoenix defense. I mean, they've got decent defense, I imagine. I mean, with an Opwash and an Issei, you can't really go too wrong.
Yeah, decent space control, great CC lockdown. If anybody steps out of line, we've seen what the CC chain can be for the Kaolin Wardens, and in a simplified state, which is exactly what a Phoenix defense is, should be easier to come by those scenarios. Moswell can set up corpses with relative ease and make sure that wherever the Eldritch Hounds decide to root their aggression, they'll have to fight into a pretty poor position. Gino, as long as he isn't going onto Remikami, will probably be able to lock down somebody with a wall. There are opportunities for Sino to start utilizing some of the damage output he's got. Surprised to see Protector of the Jungle picked up, though, considering these next couple of fights likely will not be in the jungle unless the Kaolin Wardens try and set up an ambush. So not going to get the full value of the passive of that item, but still certainly a good power infusion. Keep your eyes on Circle Protection and Empty the Crypts. Those are the 2 major cooldowns for the Kaolin Wardens. The Eldritch Hounds can work through those, either immediately disengage once either one is dropped and then go back in, or just have Remikami land another massive ultimate. Those are the ways for the Eldritch Hounds to fight back in. The Kaolin Wardens kind of got to hope that those ultimates find value.
We do have a bit of a split of both of the teams, 4-4 on the left side. Tier 2 does still go down, not even necessary for Oath to have joined that fray. He can go right back to the mid and try and keep that push going, while the rest of his team's grouped up for the Phoenix. All 5 members of the Kaolin Wardens now grouping themselves to defend this left Phoenix. The Eldritch Hounds can take their time before they decide to go in, maybe wait for Oath to push out another tower of his own, add a little bit more gold to their pockets, and then have the full presence of their team ready for this left side fight.
Relentless One will line up against Oath in mid, but only to watch the Tier 2 tower fall. Relentless One is a major key to the Kaolin Wardens team fight, so I'm sure they'd like to have him regrouped as the Trebuchet gets involved.
Trebuchet is here, so are 4 of the Hounds. Oath and Relentless still sitting around mid. Relentless will make his rotation over kind of haphazardly, kind of half-hearted more than anything between the 2 of them. Oath is just keeping this solo laner busy, while the Trebuchet is just getting free poke on the Phoenix. Sure, it's not a lot, but every little bit that the Eldritch Hounds don't need to do themselves counts.
It does, and if Sino's going to continually poke it out with Spirit Ball, That means he won't have that for defense, so it could be an engage now.
Spirit Ball is down, and so are the beads from Sino. In the backline goes Remikami, finds a big ult, but the shields out of Sino from not only his abilities, but from his items are keeping him alive. Gino goes down, and Remikami up against 3 will keep them out as the Phoenix goes down, and the River's Rebuke will get out the Phantom Shell. Remikami still doing fine in the backline, does get picked up, drop right back down, and almost falls down. Finally, Griff is able to shut down the solo laner. Oath finds a way out thanks to the help of the Riptide. With the left side Phoenix down, the Hounds have got their prize. Now they're just trying to find a way out.
Crimson sticking his heels in, trying to take the 1v2. Drops Relentless one to about 10% HP. Careful, you walk out those doors, you can't get back in. The Eldritch Hounds could look to re-engage here. Mazwan Sino isolated in the jungle, joined now by Griff.
Griff goes through, Aegis burned by Erupt Crimson now, and he cannot find his way through a Riptide. He kept trying to go back through, but every bit of CC is keeping him locked right back in. 2 down on the Eldritch Hounds, and the Kaolin Wardens can keep this push going.
The Hounds should be able to disengage from here. The Kaolin Wardens have not got the greatest opportunities or assets to close this gap up. They do have great opportunity to at least take down the tier 2 tower, potentially look towards the Gold Fury as well. Quick force back to base here. Seems like it will be a Gold Fury call, as the Kaolin Wardens have not got their minion wave grouped up. The Eldritch Hounds look to me like they kind of lost the thread in that team fight. Remikami does a very good job zoning 3 for the entirety of the Phoenix siege. That Phoenix went from 100 to 0 with Remikami, keeping 3 people locked down the entire time. But afterward, when the Eldritch Hounds decided to push into the base even further, approaching that Titan, things got a little sour.
Quig walks up, eats a lot of CC, does manage to get through in the second Riptide to find a way out. A third one gets him all the way to the depths of the tower, and Oath is able to turn the fight around. Moswall goes down, the crypts were emptied, but it's not enough. Doomman Bro finds Griff, and Sino, falling low himself, does have a little bit of help thanks to that Book of the Dead to keep him up, but Remikami will dive right back in and put him down.
That very well could be the game. The Kaolin Wardens over-aggressive. Even had they got Quig there, which they likely should have, they're dead. I mean, that was a Jingwei ultimate into the tier 2 tower. That was Sino playing on tower line, and the Eldritch Hounds were 4-stacked. Erupt Crimson finally spawns back up towards the tail end of that fight. 30 seconds left on the nearest respawn. Only 2 alive for the Kaolin Wardens, and it's 2 tanks.
Yeah, the Hounds will just walk right in. Gino and Relentless got to put on a hell of a zone to keep it out, but it's a sanctified field and a River's Rebuke. No chance that they can stop this one down. The Eldritch Hounds will just walk right into the throne room and take this Titan down. Quarter HP left on the final objective. Relentless one doing everything he can to slow it down, but it's not going to be enough. The Eldritch Hounds take game 1.
The Eldritch Hounds in the team fights were just more controlled. They were more concise in their initiations. Once Remikami got online, it felt like that Osiris was nearly unkillable unless he's literally in your Titan room, which was the last time we saw him fall down. Clean team play, and it's that team-based oriented just composition from the Hounds that we saw them really start to establish throughout Masters that carries them through this match. Once we got to that late game team fight where it was 5-on-5 engagements, it just felt like the Eldritch Hounds were never letting go.
Yeah, the Eldritch Hounds, they started off very early, got a few big kills onto Oath. That did then eventually slow down when Sino started getting a couple of those items, but it took a little bit of time before the Eldritch Hounds were able to kick themselves back in. Wardens held them off, but that lead eventually just started getting way too out of control for the Hounds.
And I'd argue that was a game where you want the Wardens to be the proactive component. You want them getting active in the early. You want Sino getting involved like he did towards the soul lane. It was a first gank towards Remikami where he burns beads at level 2, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, that's the pace we're going to see from the E-set. Not the case. It was Oath getting active in the early, was eventually slowed down, but had the Kaolin Wardens been allowed to leverage that aggression in the early game to look towards objectives, to utilize the circle protection, things likely would have gone better, but the efforts of Oath essentially squashes those aspirations.
Yeah, the Eldritch Hounds able to take game number 1 over the Kaolin Wardens, and we'll come back with game number 2 right after this break.
Hey, say hello to your mother for me.
No!
Okay. Stomper, stomper! Sure they got school!
Greetings.
How you doing? Girl, you got some junk in that trunk. Ooh, hot stuff. Later.
Farewell.
Welcome back to Phase 2 of the SCC. Game number 1 goes to the Eldritch Hounds off the back of the early aggression from Oath. Maybe the late game prowess of Remikami over on that Osiris solo lane, able to help net themselves game number 1 and put themselves on a good start to this best of 3 set up against the Kaolin Wardens. My name's Jim. I got Mifflin joining me here to help break down game 1 and get us set up for game number 2. Because a lot of what you were, kind of going on about the end there, just the Kaolin Wardens, it seemed like they wanted to fight back, and they did fight back in the early game up against Oath specifically in that jungle, being able to mitigate that set. But they just didn't have an answer for Remikami when it came to those late game fights.
No, once that Bumba's Hammer was finished up, it just felt like there wasn't really a great opportunity to find anything that could kill. I saw crits landing for 68 damage in the late game. I mean, Spectral Armor buff, crit nerf, plus tether, plus damage mitigation of Osiris will eventually add up to that, but I think really the Kaolin Wardens needed to find their stride throughout the early portions, and the efforts of Oath were able to stop that essentially in their tracks. That said, the Kaolin Wardens can at least say, hey, it was probably just that execution in the early game that cost us this match. I mean, the composition is something that we could still utilize and even could look towards in game 2. Or you might just go for something a little bit more standard, because it seems like the Eldritch Hounds have finally found the answer to this E-set jungle that Sino's been playing for, 2 years now he's been locking in this ESET jungle and has been essentially just getting away with it. And we had theorized on the desk for a couple of years now. Some of the coaches we had opportunities to talk to said, hey, the only thing that can stop ESET jungle is aggression onto the ESET throughout the early. The Eldritch Hounds put that into practice, Oath in particular, constantly inside that enemy jungle. Made sure that Sino wasn't allowed to get to that, Spear of Desolation until 10 or so minutes into the game. And if you're getting your first item done 10 or so minutes in, I believe it was actually closer to 6, you're probably not getting the best value from it.
I mean, 6 minutes does feel like an eternity for the early game to get an item, especially because by 5 minutes and 20 seconds, Oath already had 3 kills on the board, and that was with a Golden Blade set. He didn't even elect to go to a Bumba's Hammer like so many of the other junglers would typically go, or even like his partner Remikami in that solo lane. He went for that Bumba's Spear, in fact, instead. I mean, about 22,000 plus damage across the board for Oath and Crimson. Dude Man Bro just barely topping out the charts for his team. Moswald, though, doing Moswald things on this Opwash, able to drop those Crips in so many team fights, get a lot of big damage stacked up for himself, just not enough when it came down to these team fights.
60,000 damage mitigated by Remikami.
Crazy.
We need to see some kin size. I need some dominances locked in. Let's get some executioners, some more penetration, because you cannot allow the front line of a team to do that much in these fights, especially with that level of sustain. There needs to be an answer. It might just be in the bans. If I'm seeing that from Remikami, I'm banning Osiris, full stop.
100%. We'll see if that does get banned away for Picks and Bans game at number 2 between the Wardens and the Hounds. It will be the Wardens once again taking that first pick spot. Last time around we saw was the Jing Wei was the number 1 priority out of the Wardens, making sure to get something comfortable in that dual lane with how prevalent Jing Wei was during the Masters. No surprise that she was the number 1 god picked up at the very least, but didn't quite have the same level of performance or dominance that we were maybe so accustomed to from the Masters land.
Because Crit got nerfed, and Spectral got buffed, and all the defense items got buffed, and Glad Shield's back, and that's all going to add up to, I call 9-5 bonus the, hey, Hunters are a little bit out of control, let's get that back in line patch, and well, so far, seems to have worked out, except for the fact that Dude Man Bro tops the damage charts by a pretty significant amount. So, there are answers. You could go towards either more tank shred style hunters, gods that have got standard attack speed stims, like Rom, Artemis, guys that can really utilize the kin size still to a very high degree. I think Crit still has a place in the meta. Line up against Oath or someone like that, you'll probably win those 1v1s, but when there's an Osiris gunning you down, you don't really get to pick your targets, and that's exactly what happens to Griff last time.
Still a lot of respect thrown over towards Oath pick at the very least. The Bakasura once again banned by the Kaolin Wardens alongside Baron, but this time it's going to be Yamoja adding to those ranks, making sure that Quig doesn't get to play one of those power guardians over in that dual lane. And it'll be the same 3 bans out of the Hounds, the Amaterasu, Nem, and Mercury, all taken away. Jingwei once again the top pick for the Kaolin Wardens, but a little bit of a change up, at least for the Hounds. It's going to be Khepri as a first god picked up.
Just a great plug-and-play pick. I mean, Scarab's Blessing finds value on whoever you're using it on, except for maybe yourself, but even then, throughout the early portions, you can use it to escape some of these slippery situations. So Khepri not only strong in any composition, but also incredibly frustrating to play against, and will limit the Wardens in the style of draft that they can go towards. You do not want to lock in multiple single-target gods up against a Khepri or a Geb, by that matter, just because they are the anti-single target gods. They're saying, hey, I can protect somebody, and I mean just one person. I'm either going to Stone Shield them, or I'm Scarab's Blessing. They are going to make their way out of these situations. As of now, the Wardens sticking to their guns, going back to that exact same style. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hounds go ahead and get their jungle pick here and make sure it's something that can get aggressive early and put the kibosh to the C set.
Last time around it was Set. This time it's Poseidon. We've been seeing a lot more flexibility to this god over towards the jungle alongside that mid, so maybe a little bit of ambiguity in the draft of the Eldritch Hounds, at least for now. The Chernobog Khepri most likely slotted towards that dual lane. Dude Man Bro had a good performance on Chernobog last game, so would not be surprised to see him pilot that hunter one more time. But now that kind of leaves some questions up for the Wardens. Do they think this Poseidon's going to the jungle for Oath, or do they think that this one's going over to Crimson in the mid lane? For now, the Hounds themselves will start throwing some targeted shots towards Moswell. Finally, not going to allow him to play that Opwash any longer.
And it seems to me the Wardens think this is going to be Poseidon in the jungle. Ull banned out, would have been a great mid-hunter selection, so the Wardens essentially saying, hey, we know where that's going. But speaking of this Poseidon, it is a curious lock-in. Back when ESET and Poseidon were the cream of the crop in the mid lane, when that was the meta, ESET was the counter selection. I don't care how many Krakens you throw onto an E-set, as long as Circle Protection is on her feet, she's going to survive the Kraken and will likely resustain a fair deal immediately afterward. You don't have that instant blow-up potential. It could be that the Hounds are going to leverage it throughout the early game, try and fight pre-5, find these opportunities to get the Kraken online before Circle Protection is available, but if this goes even, if the Wardens could just make it to level 5 without Cyno falling down, assuming that this is Cyno going towards the E-set, it still does have some flex potential. Could be support, could be mid, could be jungle with this team. Could be mid, could be jungle with this team now with Gab locked in. But assuming it is Cyno, I think Poseidon is just not the greatest answer to it. It's not going to allow you to play that same aggressive style that we saw from Set in the previous match.
We do see a Moose and Cobb locked in, and normally I would say there's the flex for your Hunter and your mid laner, but with the Masters Land, we did see quite a few AMC solos coming out. So we'll have to wait and see what the final pick is of the Hounds maybe before we try and lock in where the remainder of these picks go. A Chiron as a last pick, though, over towards the mid lane for Moswell. So that will be the E set, most likely slanted towards the jungle. So now if you're the Hounds, you're looking at a couple of Hunters and a Vamana going to be locked in. And now I'm almost thinking this might be jungle because we've been seeing a lot of the Vamana jungle. I mean, Twig and Kirmi really able to pilot that one in the last couple of weeks of play.
And it is one that could stick the E-set very well, with Golden Blade being one of the largest infusions of movement speed in the game at 10%. It will also help him out with his lacking jungle clear. Could very well be Vamana in the jungle, which would slate AMC over towards the solo, as you had alluded to a little bit earlier, Poseidon in mid. And I think that is where I would prefer to see all these picks. And speaking of Vamana, he's got decent matchup not only into the E-set, but will have great chase down potential onto the Chiron. If he so chooses, could go immediately in towards even a Frostbound Hammer in the second slot. So if you're going Golden Blade into Frostbound, you're not only faster, but you're making everybody slower. Colossal Fury is something you could deal with in the late game. Ankh very good against him, but that's the late game. You're not picking Vamana for that.
Kaolin Wardens up against the Eldritch Hounds. Game number 2 in the best of 3. And it will be not at all what we were maybe alluding to just a moment ago. Instead, it will be the Vamana solo up against this King Arthur. You got Oath taking the Poseidon in the jungle that we were maybe kind of thinking on earlier, and Crimson now piloting the AMC for mid. But maybe Rimacom is still going at least towards that Golden Blade that you were mentioning just earlier on. We'll give him some decent clear up against the King Arthur once he does get that online.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little while, and Golden Blade will be decent at getting back towards lane because it's going to be the only way he does it. Ramakami, that is, as he has gone towards beads in the first slot yet again. So Relentless One, his goal for the early portion of this match is to put as much pressure as possible onto this Vamana and force him back to base. Relentless One can utilize his own HP bar as a resource and then teleport back to lane, whereas Ramakami will just have to walk. So the Kaolin Warden solo laner should be able to leverage some aggression, as he did in Game 1. Whether or not it can turn into anything is yet to be seen.
Oath taking a lot of damage in this mid 2v2, losing out on that trade there at the very least. And something interesting to see here, I barely spotted it there sitting in the mid lane. I had to check the relics. Quig has gone for a bracer first, dropped that in the mid lane right away.
Yeah, that's just a ranked start that we've been seeing a good deal of recently. Just great infusion of power, decent movement speed, should help out a lot in the early pressure. And we had said that Oath in the Poseidon jungle will want to be establishing a lead up against Cyno. Giving some power over is one way to do it.
Big slow, but the tidal wave misses right after, so Oath will not get as much damage on the Cyno as he had maybe hoped. Dude Man and Quig in the jungle trying to go for an invade on that Serpent camp. Do manage to pick that one up, stealing some XP away from Gino and Griff, and getting pressure in that dual lane shouldn't be too difficult. Jingwei and Geb not really known to be able to push up those lanes.
No, not at all. Look at this pressure, though, the Kaolin Wardens have already established in mid. Oath pulling the ripcord goes towards his own back camps, which will forfeit all of the neutral farm towards the mid. Right side camps, left side camps, essentially belonging to the Kaolin Wardens. Except Cyno decides to go towards his own back camps instead. So it will be at least up for grabs if Erupt Crimson can find pressure in mid to look towards those left side camps. These small poking and prodding engagements are really the difference maker throughout the early portions of this match. In 9-5 and now 9-5 bonus, it still is incredibly difficult to find actual kills on the map, at least until you get your ultimate available. So it's all about the macro farm, and as of now, the Kaolin Wardens coming out slightly ahead in macro.
Yeah, very slight gold lead over to the Kaolin Wardens with no blood spilled just yet. Relentless being the good solo laner and making sure his jungler gets some of that XP for the blue. Both of them will tip over to level 4 with the dropping of that buff camp. Mid lane and Crimson does still have at least a little bit of staying power, was able to get those mid camps for himself, or at least the larger heartbeat of the two. So keeping himself relevant in the lane, but still down at least a little bit in XP to Moswall.
He will be. If he's allowed to soul this red buff, would do a good deal to catch Crimson back up. But Oath on the rotation will definitely want that farm, and getting your Kraken available to you as quickly as possible is massive, especially considering not a single Aegis has been purchased by the Kaolin Wardens. Only a couple of beads, some blinks as well. So Cyno, Geno, even Relentless One to a certain extent, very susceptible to the ganks from this Poseidon. Once we start to approach level 12 and those second relics are starting to be looked at, Shells, Aegis is all going to make it even more difficult for Poseidon to find value in the jungle. Means that you really want to get active now, and about a half-level lead for Cyno might be able to mitigate some of that effectiveness.
That level 5 has ticked over for the jungler of the Kaolin Wardens. Level 5s for both the solo laners. They're going to make use of those ultimates as quick as possible,
Yikes.
but not quite enough distance to catch Remakami out there. Those beads able to get him out of that King Arthur ultimate just a little bit earlier and find his escape.
And he will be able to pick up Golden Blade on this back, I believe. So it won't take him too long to rotate back towards lane. Cyno splits the wave, so even if a couple of minions get pushed into the tower, Remakami won't fall too far behind. So a great survival from the Vamana. And I think it's the additional movement speed from Thousand-Fold Blade that really gets him out of there. Cyno was just barely off the mark with the auto attack that would have finished off that kill, or the Wing Gust immediately afterward. Vamana just so slippery.
And now level 5's in the duo lane. That at least gives some initiation or some disengage over to this Geb for not Geno. Crimson playing up very comfortably, I would say, for himself in this mid-camp fight. Will be able to push two different players of the Wardens by himself off of that camp to get him at least a little bit of experience. Geno and Griff will back themselves away, and I'm just waiting for somebody to pull the trigger in this mid lane fight. Maybe Oath does have Kraken available to himself, doesn't have the Doom Orb online yet, so lacking a little bit of that power, but anything that he can find on the map, you know, beads, maybe bait the Stone Shield out or something like that from Geno.
I think Oath should just be hunting down Cyno. He knows Circle Protection is down for at least a couple more seconds, and that is one way in. No beads, no Aegis for the E-set means that she is incredibly susceptible. Cyno, realizing that, won't fight there. Instead, goes over towards the soul lane, but expect to see a whole lot of this. You're able to force the ultimate, and that's about it. Vamana, very hard to shut down, will be able to resustain himself and continue his own aggression.
He'll walk right back. Cyno low. Circle Protection is up. Oath will find the Kraken. Circle Protection drop through. Cyno's going to need to pop it soon. He will, but it's not enough. First blood goes the Eldritch Hounds, but where's the damage
beads.
after? Beats from Oath will get him away from the Cataclysm, but not from the ultimate out of Relentless One. He'll drop right back down, and Oath will go down for a one-for-one trade.
He will. Remakami, realizing that there's nothing he can do for his jungler, will at least be able to find some value on the map. Strips away the back camps, and then makes his way back towards base himself. Crimson doesn't rotate to that fight, so gets a couple more waves in mid, forcing Moswall back. So the half-level lead maintained by the AMC that we had saw a little bit earlier on. And taking a peek at these builds, I had expected to see just about none of this in 9-5. Both Devourers and Gilded eat massive nerfs. Gilded now no longer giving you 7 additional bonus gold when you hit the targeted minion. Instead, now it's 3 gold, which should subtract the amount you get throughout the duration of a match. And I'm pulling numbers out of a hat. I'm trusting the smarter people from Twitter and from Reddit. Around 400 total gold throughout the duration of a average 25 to 30 minute game, whereas previously it was closer to 1,000, is a pretty massive nerf. And Devourers, at the end of the day, for those of you who don't want to do the math, used to give 30% lifesteal, now at 20%. Surprised that this is still the build.
Yeah, both the Hunters going towards that one. So both of them maybe just still valuing at least the little bit of bonus gold that you're able to get from that item with the Gilded Arrow, and at least the
Good
maybe
upgrades.
somewhat decent lifesteal that you can still get out of Devourer's gauntlets there. So not sure. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I was thinking, we were kind of talking maybe we were going to see more of the Cal, Transcendence kind of starts, maybe some Atalanta's bows in there, but so far both Hunters from these teams going to stick to what's been working at least the last couple of weeks.
I am curious to see if either of these Hunters do make an adaptation in the build itself, especially Griff in that regard, considering how mitigated he was in Game 1. The spectral buffs, the crits landing for 60 would leave a bad taste in my mouth personally, so kin size and penetration might serve him well, especially considering Griff will likely be lined up against Remakami in just about every fight in the late game, because no one's peeling this Vamana away. with an Ankh pickup, you can win the 1v1 against Omana, which is an option, and you've got great tools for it. Double Hunter composition means that you're just going to have the DPS advantage. Colossal Fury makes a very easy target of Ramakami, and it seems it will be just standard crit pickup yet again for the Kaolin Wardens going down that Shuriken tree. We've seen at times the Shuriken shift from Wind Demon over to Shadow Steel to deal with sustain, and looking at the draft, Ramakami, to a certain extent Crimson, both going to have decent lifesteal, decent sustain available to them. Could be a Shadow Steel upgrade here, but I am leaning a little bit more so towards Wind Demon for Griff.
We'll be honest, Miff. I'm surprised we're not seeing more of Geb, especially with how prevalent crit has been, his passive making it to where he takes basically nothing, and now the buffs to Spectral. Feels like Geb would just be a premier pick to go up against this kind of crit meta with Hunters.
He'd be pretty strong with it, but you can also just change your build. If you're really concerned about your crit getting mitigated, just go Kinsize, just build Executioner, just play that standard new Ikavale build that we've been seeing in Ranked recently as well. But as of now, Dude Man Bro has not shown his hand. We won't know what style of build he's got.
Kraken gonna be immune
Yikes!
out by an ult from Relentless One, and he'll turn that 2v1 into basically nothing there. Ult for ult trade out, but that's gonna favor Relentless One every day of the week.
Man, just clean play from Relentless One. Perfect timing on that ultimate to make sure that Oath won't find value. And now without Kraken, he's a great target for Sino.
Needs are down for Oath, though, and now Circle Protection gone for Sino. Makami can continue his push forward, at least try and secure his blue buff. He does so, but he's staring down 3 of the Kaolin Wardens. They'll make a small dive under the Tier 1 tower. Silence is good. Stun is good, but that's going to be it. No further aggression from the Wardens.
Yeah, tower is still pretty strong, it would seem, so no tower dive potential there. 1v1 in mid will favor Moswall, as Crimson is dropped to half HP. And this is a much slower pace than we got used to in Game 1. We're back to that master style where it's more so about that 15-minute mark. Gold and experience, slight favored here or there for both of these teams. Experience advantage in the jungle for Oath, level 9, as opposed to Sino's 8. Experience also going over to Ramakami. Maybe slight gold lead to individual members of the Kaolin Wardens. But at the end of the day, not enough separation for either of these teams to even think about these objectives. Pyromancer spawning up right now, and Gold Fury just on the map to be tantalizing, as it is just incredibly strong. We probably won't see it fall for a couple more minutes. I'd be surprised if Gold Fury was the first objective to fall down.
We do see a small group of over, at least on that left side of the map, by the Hounds, but it was just to grab those Oracle Harpies. They'll get vision on the objective. Ramakami up against Relentless One. See the same build path coming out from Relentless, at least the Sovereignty and the Glad Shield. A lot of physical defense, a lot of sustain to this King Arthur's name, but it will be the Pyromancer started up by the Eldritch Hounds. Gino's going to have to do a lot to try and steal this one away,
Whoa.
but just a little bit late on that shockwave to grab that one out. Eldritch Hounds will secure the Pyromancer, but that was definitely a little close.
Yeah, it looked to me like that was gonna be a steal. The Kraken just slightly off the mark, as there's a 1v1 on the left side. Crimson trades Stinger for Circle Protection, and Sino takes a lot of damage.
Gino rolls in, does have Cataclysm, but not going to use it right now. Oath is being traded out against Moswall, and the shots from Moswall are good to take the 1v1 up against. The Dude Man Bro, though, rotates in and makes it a 1-for-1. Giddy up is good to get Moswall out. Dude Man Bro finds his way into the Tier 1 tower, and now the 2v2 in mid will finally disperse the 1-for-1 trade at the end.
1-for-1, jungle for jungle, but Griff is still around. Has ultimate available, so unlikely that he should fall. Soul Laner's going to skirmish over the blue buff yet again. Ramakami's got ultimate, so don't be fooled. He's still very survivable, but maybe holds on to it for too long. No, he's fine.
Does have just enough HP after landing down to get right back up, and will sustain most of that damage that was thrown at him right back up, and can still get a little bit of pressure up, at least on the wave. But now, pressure is for the Hounds, at least in the mid lane. Moswall is going to eat quite a bit of poke the Stinger down, but that's going to be beads out of the Chiron.
So now Moswall going to have really no options to deal with the Kraken, unless he heads back to base and purchases an Aegis, which he is very capable of. Now taking over to level 12. I'm keeping my eyes on Oath. Now Poseidon hasn't done a whole lot so far this game. Has got great objective burn with the Trident, has got decent objective secure. That was a little bit iffy on last viewing, but will be able to utilize that towards Gold Furies and Fire Giants as time goes on. Also, utilizing the passive Poseidon means that Oath is going to just have more movement speed than Sino and should be able to outpace on the farm, which has been the case so far over the last 12.5 minutes. But I'd love to see Oath forcing some relics, getting active on the map, using that Kraken to just apply some damage, because as of now, it's been a very passive style, and that's not what I associate with this player.
Eldritch Hounds have started the Gold Fury. Cataclysm finds 3 in the backline. The Gold Fury
They
will
got
get
it.
stolen away by the Wardens. The Kraken just a little too late out of the jungler from the Hounds, and a nice steal from the Wardens will keep themselves in this game. Still down about 500-600 gold, but that objective's got to feel good for the Wardens to get back in this.
I could have misperceived it, but it looked to me like Oath was a little bit late on the beads there. Gets knocked up by the Geb, turns golden in the air, and Krakens as soon as he lands, which was too late. So great steal from the Kaolin Wardens. Got to give credit over to Gino with that phenomenal engagement. 3-man Cataclysm into the 4-man knockup.
Damage by Moswell up onto Crimson, recognizing just how potent a Chiron can be. Transcendence and Jotun's Wrath finished up by that mid lane Hunter, so he's got a lot of damage into his kit. Coupling that with the Bluestone Pendant. Remikami does have that slight lead in the solo lane still. Experience across the board, still slightly favoring the Eldritch Hounds, if not only a half level to 1 level for each of the players.
So now it's about what can the Kaolin Wardens do to close up some of those gaps, and finding a pick on the Quig would be massive, but here's the thing about how that god's got death immunity. He does. Not just for himself, but for anybody else. So focusing Quig might get rid of that cooldown, but it will not be a commitment from the Kaolin Wardens. Instead, Dude Man Bro in some trouble, but jumps onto a wall and jumps immediately away. Sino uses the blink and comes up empty.
Yeah, Sino whiffs the Spirit Ball at the end there as well. That could have maybe put some pressure on Dude Man Bro, maybe got his beads or his Aegis out, but a nice sidestep by Dude Man Bro gets him back out into the tier 1 and back to safety. Thought maybe Oath would try and get aggressive over on this left side of the map. It's a 4v4 grouping. Sword Protection is dropped. The Kraken in the back line.
That'll do it.
Isn't enough to help out with Crimson to take down 1, but Moswell with the shots on that Centaurus does manage to find 1. Crimson low, but not going to be enough to take down the mid laner. Once again, a 1-for-1 with the junglers.
Moswell dashing forward. Dude Man Bro forced to retreat. 2 Hunters staring him down. Good damage from Moswell. Might be able to turn this one around. Aegis for Aegis trade. And Dude Man Bro will disengage.
Quig will be fine as well. Honey dropped by Crimson. The purple buff was secured by the Eldritch Hounds, so at the end of the day, it does still remain just that 1-for-1 trade out between these mage junglers coming out from both of these teams. But that gold is starting to slowly creep its way back down to the Eldritch Hounds. They lost that objective earlier on. That was about a 1,500 lead for themselves at that point. It's going right back.
Every single fight this game has been a 1-for-1 trade with the junglers. Both junglers sitting 0-3. Both junglers the only ones to have died on their teams, and neither one of them getting any sort of kills for themselves. Fortunately for the Eldritch Hounds, Oath has got 1 more assist, so a slight lead there. These mage jungles struggling to find their pacing. But mages scale into the late game, and once we get a couple more items, that scaling will become more and more apparent. Spear of the Magus finished up for Oath, means that his damage output has spiked pretty significantly, and taking a peek at Sino's build, I'm not going to be tricked this time. It's probably a Book of Thoth, right? It's gotta be.
Gotta be. I mean, he did it last time. Why not just go for it again? Maybe the Eldritch Hounds look towards a Pyromancer. For now, they'll just grab their Greater Scorpion. Gino was trying to sniff that one out to see if maybe the Chaos side team would go for that objective. For now, it's going to at least be Oracle's. Dude Man Bro gets spotted looking the wrong way. Does end up using his beads to get out of this one. Drops the ultimate, but he doesn't get to the sky in time. Griff finally able to find the first 1 god pick in one of these fights.
Yeah, and the first kill onto a non-jungler. Oath. Just the wildest Kraken I think I've ever seen. Nobody nearby. I like the gumption, though.
Well, we'll see if it pays off for the rest of the team. Root is good onto Gino. The title, or the Whirlpool keeping Gino locked in, and Remikami does find some good damage. Spirit Ball not going to be enough to take down Oath, as he does have his beads available. Relentless One walking through the top side of the jungle, and Remikami is fishing for a kill up against Sino. Will chase down this East set, but slowed down by the Chiron in the backline, but Relentless can find the 2v1 pickup against Oath.
Yeah, Oath may have fallen, which means Sino will follow. That's the theming of this game. Both junglers now sitting at 0-4. Dude Man Bro on the respawn has used his ultimate to re-engage. He wants Griff. He wants the 1v1. Sino's not alive to turn the odds in the favor of the Wardens, and, well, Griff will just disengage himself. Airstrike over the wall. Should maintain his life, but maybe won't get him a purple buff. Invade from Dude Man Bro should be able to take this one away, but he's going to go for the kill.
Dude Man will just make sure that Griff does not come back to try and steal this purple buff. Will force the Jingwei all the way back to base, and does get that invade. That'll force Moswell to rotate over, and he'll drop a ward. At least Dude Man Bro will, just to make sure that nobody is sneaking around inside the mist of that offering camp. notices nobody's there and will be able to make his way back to the lane with that purple buff around his waist.
So now the Eldritch Hounds, having taken the Pyromancer as well, can be able to put all of their attention towards the Oni Fury, which is going to be spawning in about a second. By the time I'm finished taking this breath, it will have rejoined the map. The Eldritch Hounds still nursing a slight golden experience lead, should be able to establish great positioning here. They've got phenomenal objective burn, but if we're talking about confirmation, you got to talk about the team with ESET, and the Kaolin Wardens have got that for themselves. So either team has got the potential to set up defensive positioning, and I think I'd favor whichever squad gets there first. And as of now, the Relentless One already on this side of the map, seems like it's going to be the Kaolin Wardens, but take a peek at Sino. The confirmation for the objective is in solo.
He's all the way on the other side. Relentless does pick up quick, slams him back down, but not a lot of follow-up damage. Rimakami goes up into the Colossal Fury to chase out the Hunter of the Kaolin Wardens, and will put a lot of damage up against Grim. Kraken is good from Oath to take down Chino, and the airstrike forced out, and Rimakami has not let up the gas pedal, and he will find another pick. 2 down on the Kaolin Wardens.
That's the strength of Amana and Shiva, the ability to just continually walk forward. Rimakami putting it on full display as Relentless One may be tanky, but he's stuck.
And not going to survive against 5. Sino has finally joined the fight to find a Spirit Ball up against Rimakami. Does get the beads, but that's not going to be enough to slow down the Hounds. They take the tier 1 tower, and they very well could just take this tier 2 as well with Quick tanking it up.
Sino sticking around a little bit longer than I would have liked for safety, but will be able to avoid the root from Dude Man Bro. Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower will fall. The objective we were talking about earlier is still available. Grim just narrowly avoids the stun and puts in plenty of damage. Maswal and Sino will not be going for a defense here.
Does expend the spear or the stinger to try and keep that zone out. Meanwhile, it's the 2 carries trading this Oni Fury. Very close comes the health bars of the 2 carries of the Eldritch Hounds, but they are able to finally grab that objective. The Fury will go the way of the Hound. Sino goes in and goes down. Rimakami finds that pick, and now Maswal on the run. But how far can this Chiron run from a Vamana? Not very far, especially with his dash already gone. It's a double kill for Rimakami, and he can just keep going if he wants to. But he'll like to stop, for at least for now.
Yeah, might as well go for the Fire Giant, Rimakami supposes. This guy has been on a tear today. A phenomenal performance from the Soul Laner of the Eldritch Hounds continues into Game 2. 6-0-2, 8 of 10 kills participated in by the Soul Laner. Those kills are hard to come by. When he got to level 20, rotated out, and things started to happen. A little early on the Kraken, but nobody around means Fire Giant will go to the Eldritch Hounds, all 5. 2 still dead, 20 seconds on Maswal's respawn. Haven't headed back to base just yet, doesn't need to. Do the Eldritch Hounds. Tier 1 tower in the Soul Lane will be followed by the Tier 2. Massive swing for the Chaos team.
Yeah, a lot of gold now in the pockets of the Eldritch Hounds. They take Tier 1 and 2 in mid lane. Fire Giant, a few kills, a couple more towers in right, and maybe one more pick up against Relentless One, who walks a little too far. And Dude Man Pro, with the final auto, will take down the solo laner one more time. But the Eldritch Hounds have not stopped there. The Phoenix is in their eye on the right-hand side.
No way.
Rimakami gonna find a pickup against Sino once again. And up into the big form, will just march his way over to the right side of the map. Phoenix will go down shortly, and the Eldritch Hounds can continue this onslaught in. Stops the rollout from Chino, but that's gonna be about all that Rimakami can continue doing.
Oath's got some damage to make sure there isn't much follow-up. Griff dashes in with the passive, but will not continue the chase. Right side Phoenix falls down. Mid Phoenix maintained by the Kaolin Wardens, and the Eldritch Hounds have just kept up their onslaught. Time to head back to base and spend that well-earned gold. Significant power spikes should be hit here. Stone cutting sword for Rimakami. I thought he was hitting hard before. Going to be hitting even harder now. Animosity finished as well. Do not want to line up against this Vamana. Titan's Bane for Erupt Crimson Balance Blade. My man just bought so much stuff. Stone cutting, Animosity,
got half
and
his
Balance
build.
Blade. And he was owning before. Not to mince words, this guy was owning. Doug, next time this Vamana gets involved, let's just watch him. This guy is crazy.
To stick to the third person of Rimakami at this point, I mean, that's basically all that we need to see. 7-0-3 on the Vamana, 10 of the 12 kills for his team, and just barely not topping the damage charts, which I'm surprised he hasn't. But then again, he did just go back and buy 3 full items with that back with the
damage
stone
items.
cut. Yeah, all damage based out of there. So if he was already hitting hard before, well, you better hope that you don't square up with him in a 1v1 at all.
Yeah, this is like, this might as well just be a jungle build at that, man. Rimakami playing with confidence now, and It's a simple confidence. Trebuchet on the left side should help out the Eldritch Hounds on this siege. Keep your eyes on the Wardens. It's going to happen quick.
Remakami goes to the back line and just full combos
Hello?
Boswell by himself. Griff now on the run, but it's the big baby form
Stop
for
him.
Remakami to get the airstrike out of the Hunter. And who's going to stop Remakami? The answer right now might be nobody. Sino drops the opening kick in. Top 2-man pro finds the crits, and Remakami on a tear on the Vamana. Game over. Eldritch Hounds, the solo laner, on an onslaught this entire game. Thought maybe he'd get one more, trying to find Griff, a relentless one, and Oath will find it. He'll even stand inside the fountain to get another kill. Crimson closed it for the Dia side, and game 2 convincingly by the Eldritch Hounds.
A slower pace that suited the Eldritch Hounds. Very used to it after playing in that Masters event. Will take it to the Kaolin Wardens into 17-5. Gold, experience, and the game all to the Hounds. Off the back of Remakami. I'm going to keep saying his name because you need to engrave it into your brains. That performance was dominant.
8-0-7 to end the game as the solo
That's a lot.
laner. We see 8-0-7 from things like mid laners, from
Junglers,
carries every so often.
People that can have people
Right.
like to fight.
People who are literally around the map for the majority of the game. But no, that was on the solo laner Remakami, who also had a dominant performance in game 1 on the Osiris. If I'm teams, I'm just banning. Can we expend all 5 of our bans to take a player off the team, force them to use their sub?
Well, they tried at Masters to do it to Oath, and it had worked.
It worked.
Do you want to do it? You can't do it to both of them. You only got
No.
5 bans total. So now 2 massive threats on the side of the Eldritch Hounds have seemed to hit their stride competitively. Oath and Remakami holding it down for their team.
And we're seeing why this was the #1 seed in phase #1 of the SCC and why they may continue to hold that moniker here in phase 2 of the SCC. Remakami and Oath leading the charge, and Remakami specifically on the Eldritch Hounds in game #2. This Vamana, what we were maybe kind of hypothesizing to be a jungle pick for Oath, based off what was picked out there, goes to the solo lane, but he plays this pick like a jungler.
He does. Relentless One was getting the better end of the 1v1s for the first 6-7 levels with that Glad Shield immediately into Sovereignty style of build. But once Remakami was allowed to start building some damage and looking at anybody that wasn't a King Arthur, well, those people weren't around for very long because Remakami made short work of them, as you'll see. Simple combo, blink and a knock up, immediately followed up by auto attack, cancels, and damage from the rest of his abilities. If you get into a sticky situation, Colossal Fury should be able to help you out. And Remakami, with those simple tools, makes simple, light work of the opposition.
Walks up, W keys, and left clicks most people, and whenever the left click wasn't quite enough, had some abilities to combo in there, near full comboing a couple of people in these late game fights. You saw it up against Sino, and you see it up against Moswell. This is just one guy, Frenzy Pop and full combo up. In fact, he didn't even need his second ability. That was just the knock up and the Umbrella Ring combo there. This man on a tear, this game on a tear, game #1. If we were to give MVPs to any player, I gotta give it to Remakami this set.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I don't have that authority, but I'll say it. MVP over to Remakami. We got to at least make note of the fact that it wasn't just the build for Remakami in that last fight where Moswell gets eviscerated by 3 auto attacks. That was also Bracer plus Radiance, or Belt rather, plus Radiance. So the Hounds doing a great job facilitating their soul laner, who put out 21,000 damage, by the way. Still beat out by Erupt Crimson, who will not allow us to have a clean narrative.
No.
But only by 400.
Look, it's AMC, man. Bees are the freest damage in the game.
Well,
it's
soul
like
laner.
Even still, though, like
Fair enough,
the fact that soul laner. But again, you mentioned he doesn't want to square up against the King Arthur very often. You don't want to take those trades.
He didn't.
No, he waited till the carries eventually came over and was able to find those successful ones there. So Eldritch Hounds find a win in our first set of the day up against the Kaolin Wardens, and in their first set of phase 2 of the SCC. We'll take a look at the schedule, see what else is available to us. Our next set is going to be the Yomi Tanuki up against the Shabalba Storm. A couple of the mid-pack teams from last time around, the 3rd and 4th seed, now going to be squaring off.
Yeah, I am excited to see how these two teams have changed. For those of you not in the know, Yomi Tanuki are the Sada Dragon, Tripno, Hydrogen, Leon, Snatty Squad, Shabalba Storm, formerly the Fun Havers, are Oceans, In My Zen, Joshi, Magic Feet, and Uzi. Both teams do not have the greatest performance during Masters, and having had the opportunity to speak with them, said, hey, we want to get back in there, we want to continue to improve and continue to push ourselves forward. So I'm expecting different versions of these squads, maybe different styles of draft or play style on the map. Either way, adaptations should be there.
We'll see what does come from those two teams. We're going to take it to a quick break. When we come back, set 2 of the day. We'll be right and ready for you.